What's up, everybody? Welcome to what we'll call a bit of an emergency edition of the Mile High Hockey Podcast. He's Drew Spivak. I'm Will Peterson. Haven't talked to you guys in about a month, but the Avs made news this morning that was certainly worthy of a podcast. They have given Brock Nelson a new 3-year deal worth $7.5 million a season. He will be your second line center probably for the rest of his career and the next 3 years. Drew, let's just talk about it. It's June the 4th, and perhaps the Avalanche have just made one of their biggest moves, if not the biggest move of the offseason.
Yeah, talk about news that kind of came out of nowhere this morning. Did not anticipate that coming because, a lot of things we heard. I know Adrian Dater tweeted a couple weeks ago that things were not looking good as far as bringing Brock Nelson back this next season. But then we started to get some more news from Dave Pagnotta from the fourth period saying that, the Avs were talking with his agent that things could be moving in this direction. And then bam, here we are today. And the Avs have their number 2 center locked up. And it's a good thing because, a lot of the question marks we've had each Avalanche offseason really for the last couple of years since Nazem Kadri left as well. All right, number 1, who's going to be the goaltender? And number 2, who's going to be the second line center? Both these questions are now answered. It's encouraging to know that like 2 of the biggest question marks, and really 3 if you add the Gabe Landeskog situation now, they're all answered now. We know who the goaltender is going to be. We know who the Gabe Landeskog is going to be healthy coming in next season. At least we think, we hope, we assume.
Knock on all the wood, yeah.
Right, yep. That's going to be the case. And now we know that Brock Nelson is going to be the second line center going into the next season and for the next 3 years. So I think if you're an Avalanche fan, this is really good news to kind of get this done, get it out of the way, knowing the free agency was set to start July 1st, and now you don't have to worry about the Brock Nelson aspect of things.
Yeah, and you mentioned a couple of those reports. You're right. At first, there was that report a couple of weeks ago from Adrian Dater. That's not going to happen. And then we heard that his agent went on the radio in Minnesota and said Brock may have interest in coming home. And then you're right, we got that report last week. Hey, there might be mutual interest in an extension. And then I just want to read this statement from Brock Nelson because I think it's really interesting. He says, "My family and I are excited to be staying in Colorado. Having spent my entire career with one organization, we weren't totally sure what to expect when we arrived in Denver. But getting the opportunity to play for the Avalanche, to compete with a great group of teammates, and in front of the tremendous fans at Ball Arena, we know this was where we wanted to stay." And I think that's just a huge win for the Avalanche organization because even though they came up woefully short in the playoffs, you and I went on and on about how frustrating that series loss was to Dallas. You didn't have a guy like Nelson go, you know what, I'm going to jump ship after you gave up a first-round pick, after you gave up Callum Ritchie, your top prospect. This had to get done, Drew. And the fact that the Avs and the organization made such a good impression on Brock in just a handful of months he was here, I think is a massive win for this front office.
And I think that's key, but I also think a big aspect into this is that he knows what this team is capable of doing, especially next season. That with the vast majority of this roster coming back next year, this is a team that's set up for great success to make a deep run to possibly a Stanley Cup final, maybe winning the cup next year. He knows, the kind of characters and the kind of personalities and, just playmakers that this team has. I mean, look what he did with Gabe Landeskog and Val Nichushkin, the 4 games they played together in the playoffs. Yes, I know they didn't score, the goal scoring wasn't where you wanted to be, but all those underlying numbers were so good, so dominant. I think what was 63% of the shot attempts at 5-on-5 and just, I think it was 42 minutes of ice time with those 3 guys. He knows he's got a great opportunity to put together a successful year and go on a deep run in the playoffs next year. Not to mention like the fact that, he liked it here. I mean, I don't understand how guys couldn't like it here. We've always heard that. They're like, guys come here. I remember Jerome McGinley when he signed here. It was like, wow, I had no idea that Colorado was this type of place that you wanted to stay here and play a couple of years here, maybe even play your whole career here. It's to me, it's telling what kind of an organization this city is lucky to have, the way they run things. It's an encouraging sign, not only with Brock Nelson, but maybe Marty Netchus, although we've kind of heard otherwise over the last couple of days, that things are going in the right direction for this team, and this team is set up to be an absolute wagon next year.
Yeah, and you're right, because if a lot of guys get traded and then they just go and lose in round 1, they're going to say, I was a rental, I'm going to go find a new permanent home. Brock Nelson clearly didn't want to be a rental, and you see my hands here. Brock Nelson has as many rings as I do, Drew. So this is a guy who's 34 years old. He wants to get a Stanley Cup ring. And to your point, This roster, yes, we all know what happened against Dallas. We're not going to rehash that. But this roster was good enough to win a cup this year. And now when they have 82 games to gel, they can be good enough to win a cup next year. And Nelson's at the phase of his career. He's made a lot of money. And he's probably not a Hall of Famer, but he's had a really, really nice career. All that's really left for him to accomplish is to get his name on that cup. And he thinks he can do it in Colorado.
Well, and where was the better opportunity? Because, we talked about going home to Minnesota. Minnesota's in a good place right now, but they're not in the same place that the Colorado is. They're not even close to being where the Avalanche are. So, you could have had the story of going back home. I think it's from War Road, something like that. You could have gone up there. You could have, kind of started a new legacy up in your home state. But why not stay here where the opportunity to win a cup is far greater than it was to go back home to Minnesota, or obviously staying on Long Island with the Islanders, because they're not going anywhere. This was the perfect opportunity and the perfect place for Brock Nelson to be in order to fulfill that goal to win a Stanley Cup.
Yeah, let's hope he gets rewarded with a ring. I was going to have us both hold up our hands, but then I was like, oh, Drew's got it.
I got a ring.
He's got a ring on. It's a bigger prize maybe than a Stanley Cup ring. I don't want to go down that road. I don't want to go down that road. Marriage, Stanley Cup ring. Let's talk about though what this means for the rest of the offseason with the Avs, because they're now right up against it in terms of salary cap space. There's got to be more moves coming because you still have kind of, third line D-men type stuff, maybe some depth stuff. Jonathan Drouin may be gone. Like what's sort of your big instinct on, is there a household name that's going to have to get traded because Brock Nelson resigns? Where are you at in terms of how the Avalanche will make news in the next 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks?
So it feels like right now as we sit, the top 6 is now set. You got Lehkonen, McKinnon, Netchis, Landeskog, Nelson, Val Nichushkin.
Yep.
You mentioned Jonathan Drouin. This pretty much all but guarantees Jonathan Drouin is gone unless he's going to take a big time pay cut to stay in Colorado. I mean, I was reading, I think it was on The Athletic, they had his market value at about $5 million. Sorry, not paying $5 million for Jonathan Drouin, who got bumped down to the third line once Gabe Landeskog came back. So he's probably gone. You still have a few holes, depth pieces that you need to figure out. Do you bring back Joel Kiviranta? You could probably bring him back from $1 million, something of that range, to kind of fill out that bottom 6. You are right now sitting with Ivan and Nikita Prichapov is kind of your depth pieces offensively right now. Not a bad way to necessarily start the regular season, but you'd probably like to see at least Kiviranta come back and kind of so on and so forth. But for me, I think the holes still sit on the blue line. You've got to figure out what you're going to do. Is Sam Girard and Josh Manson your second pairing going into next season? For me, I'd like to see one, maybe both of those guys bump down to the third pairing. I don't want to go into the regular season next year with Keaton Middleton as our, third pairing left shot defenseman. They can't do that. Sam Malinsky, I like what I saw from that kid in the second half of the season. I think you can build something with him. So I think if there is a move to be made, you probably could be looking at maybe trading a Ross Colton to A, clear up some space, or B, bring back a defensive piece. And also, what do you do with Ryan Lindgren? Because he's a free agent. Is he coming back next season? He's probably going to be due $3, maybe $4 million. So you're going to have to move a piece like Ross Colton, maybe Sam Girard, even though I don't think you can move Sam Girard knowing how thin you are on that blue line right now. I know there's a lot of Avalanche fans out there that kind of think, well, they could do better than Sam Girard. I'm not so sure they could at this point, especially
puck went off his skate in game 7 to tie the game. And I know it wasn't his fault, but it just, I don't know. A lot of us have been calling to move Sam Girard since you could have maybe paid Nazem Kadri if you had moved him. I think that the 3 names though, and you hit on 2 of them. Well, actually you mentioned all 3. Colton, Girard, and Manson all make between 4 and 5.
Yeah.
I think at least one of those guys gets moved, if not 2 of them. But you're right. If the blue line's the issue more so than the forwards, Colton's the more likely piece to get moved. But Drew, they need money. And again, you're talking about 3 guys. One's at 4, one's at 4.5, one's at 5. I know Sammy G's at 5. I can't remember who's at 4, 4.5 between Ross and Josh. But point being, the NHL's not like the NFL. This is a hard salary cap. One of those 3 guys, maybe 2 of those 3 guys probably won't play for the Avalanche next year. And it's fine because that's how hockey works. But as we're excited about the Brock Nelson news, we also have to tell people sort of the other side of the coin here.
Yeah, and I think you're right. To me, I think Ross Colton is probably the primary candidate to get moved because he's making $4 million. He's a winger. You can it's a little easier to replace wingers than it is, replacing centers. They're set at center. I mean, this team, you look at the way they are center right now, they're completely loaded at the center position.
Yeah, because McKinnon, Nelson,
Coyle, and Jack Drury. So you're set. You're set right down the middle. But I think Ross Colton, to me, seems to be the guy that's most likely to get moved, which I think for what he's making, I think he's been a little bit of a disappointment for me. He was
really hot to start the beginning of last year.
Yeah.
Then he got hurt, and then you never really felt like he was the same player.
No, to me, he's too inconsistent. So I think he's probably the guy you want to move. I know the Sammy G thing, it's interesting. And I've been a guy that in the past has called for Sammy G to get moved, but I think he's in a spot right now where you need him on this roster. Now, if you were a little bit deeper, you're probably not having this conversation. But I don't think you can go into the next season with Girard and or Manson as your second pairing defenseman. I think you've got to find a way to shore that up, because I think when you've seen both of those guys get moved down to the third pair with less minutes and better matchups, they've performed quite well. And I'll say this about Josh Manson is I think he struggled a bit in the regular season, but I thought in the playoffs, Josh Manson was one of their better players. So I'd be a little bit worried to move on.
Tied fourth on the team in goals, which is kind of depressing.
Which is sad. All in the same. But, Josh Manson's a guy that could be a little bit of a roller coaster. He could be up and he can be down. But when Josh Manson is good and throwing his body around, he's an impactful player for this organization. So I just think, in the next couple of weeks, we're probably going to see a guy like Ross Colton get moved, which might be unfortunate, but I think it's the necessary step in order to fill out this roster in order to be a true Stanley Cup contender next season.
All right, since we're in here, let's talk about it. Marty Necas, this report comes out that he, quote, wasn't overly thrilled with his time in Colorado. This comes from Sportsnet. So, I don't think they're just putting the stuff out there that they're just making up, but also I do think there's people on the other side of this saying, let's get Marty's side of this story. But Drew, if he wasn't overly thrilled and he's sort of the next guy to potentially get paid, I don't know. I'm not predicting it. I'm just putting it out there. He might be one more name to watch. If he didn't like the heat of playing with Nathan McKinnon, that maybe Marty Necas, who of course was the prize in the Mikko Rantanen trade, at least one of them, could get moved this offseason. Maybe you think I'm crazy, but I'm just, I hope we can clip this. If it happens a month from now, I'm just floating out there based on this Sportsnet article. I don't think Marty Necas is totally safe either. It's one of those weird things, like, in life, like I once had a job where I remember telling someone, I feel like I'm either going to get a big promotion or get fired, because I'm kind of in this middle sort of ground, right? And I feel that way with Necas. I feel like he's either going to get a big extension or he's going to get traded. I don't really see them just running it back with him in the last year of his deal, particularly given this report that came out from Sportsnet.
And that report was weird. I don't understand, number one, how you could not be happy playing with Nathan McKinnon.
I think Nathan McKinnon's really hard on guys. I have heard that from people before.
And I don't doubt that. And it wouldn't surprise you if that was the case. But is there a better player to set you up for success, and not only success, but a big payday than Nathan McKinnon?
Nope. I mean, I know our audience watches basketball too. It's like the Nikola Jokic bump. You get a bump from playing with Nathan McKinnon.
Exactly. It's crazy to me that this would be the case. Now, whether or not this report is believable, I don't know. I'll leave that up to each individual person to kind of decide for themselves. But I don't think you're crazy in floating. Now that this has kind of come out there, if there is any truth to this report, you could see a guy like Necas moved. I mean, he's making $6 million. He's probably going to get a raise, I don't know, $8-9 million. Whether it's this offseason or once we get to free agency next year, you go to that route. And I think some people, I'm not one of them, I think a lot of people still have question marks about Marty Necas. I know you probably do.
Well, his playoff performance was underwhelming. He had 1 goal in 7 games, and the guy he got traded for, fair or not, had 12 points, and including 5 goals and a hat trick in Game 7. I know they didn't trade him to Dallas. I always put that caveat out there. I get it, but you can't ignore how it ultimately all worked out, and kind of the opposite of a Disney movie for the Avalanche.
No, you can't ignore it. But what we saw in the 30 or so games we saw from Marty Necas in the regular season, I saw enough to know that this is a guy that I want in this lineup next to Nathan McKinnon every single night. As long as he's happy, it's all good. But if he's not,
provided he can handle that heat, right?
And that's a big caveat.
You got to be McKinnon is demanding.
Yes,
you have to have the personality that, if he chews you out, you can't take it personally. It's just because the guy's so competitive and a top 2 hockey player on the planet.
And that's a very valid point. And if that is the case where he's having a hard time playing with Nathan McKinnon, then at that point, hey, see ya, dude. They could get a decent return for Marty Necas. They're not going to get the return that they gave up for him, but they could get a decent return for Marty Netjes, or maybe you find a way, and this sounds a little bit crazy, maybe you could float out the idea out there, maybe you trade Netjes, and you do bring back Jonathan Drouin. I don't love that idea. That's not the route I would go with it, but it is definitely a possibility that we could see by the time we get to training camp in September that maybe Marty Netjes is not on this roster. I would be shocked if that were the case. I think we're going to come in with him being the top line right winger next year, but we'll see how much truth there was to this report, if it means anything one way or the other.
Well, and if we know anything, we know Chris McFarland loves to make moves and loves to make trades. The guy is addicted to moving pieces around. That's for sure. Hey, this was fun. Didn't expect to be with you on June 4th, but it's a big day as the Avalanche re-sign Brock Nelson. Maybe we'll be back next week. Maybe we'll be back in 3 weeks. I don't know, but we'll be here on Mile High Hockey whenever the Avalanche makes something happen.